On September 18th of 2021, a man by the name of Nathan Larson died in custody in Maricopa County, Arizona. Larson had been a wannabe politician running for office without success. Somehow, he ended up in prison starving himself. So how did this happen? Let's rewind. He ran a campaign in 2017 to become a member of the Virginia House of Delegates. He ran as an independent, and one of the things he said as a politician is that the 19th Amendment should be repealed. Now, I can already hear the voices saying things like based, some of which have IQs lower than 100, but let me finish the story, okay? He lost that campaign, obviously. Larson had a daughter with a transgender man, meaning an actual biological woman. He fought for the parental rights to keep his daughter, but with no luck. And no, his transgender ex was not to blame, because they have taken their lives right after the birth of their daughter. Don't ask me what happened there, I really do not know. Editing me here. Now, I could find out more information while I was editing. All of this, I have to say, has been alleged. Nothing has been factually corroborated. But apparently, due to his views, he used to take advantage of his ex, and his ex believed that they were nothing more to him but someone to have sex with. Larson's ex also became his ex because of what he would constantly imply he wanted to have the option to do to their unborn daughter. More on that later. But from what I could gather, it seems that this person, who was his ex, was under a great amount of mental anguish as a result of what this man would do. Allegedly. He eventually remarried. There's not much detail about his personal life other than that, but I can tell you that despite him running for office in 2017 and receiving backing from the Libertarian Party, he had previously been in trouble with law enforcement in 2009 because he had sent a letter to the U.S. Secret Service threatening to take the president's life. He served 14 months in prison for that. And he described the letter as an act of disobedience. Now, is this relevant? I guess somewhat if you consider he had a previous criminal record, but it's actually not even related. So, let's go forward again to his campaign of 2017. He described himself as a, quote, red pill libertarian. So in his mind, that meant that his platform included repealing the 19th Amendment, eliminating state funding specifically for girls and women's education, because women should not be able to know and learn things, right? I mean, otherwise, how do you keep them in control? Sheer force? He also wanted to legalize child, how do I put this? Sensitive content, if you catch my drift. He wanted to legalize polygamy. And of course, repeal the 1984 Violence Against Women Act. Of course. Regarding women, he stated, quote, "We need to switch to a system that classifies women as property, initially of their fathers and then of their husbands." As a father, he wanted to legalize incest, I don't know if I can say that word here, and make it legal for fathers to marry their daughters.
I would favor legalizing incest.
When it comes to school shootings, he said that feminism, not guns, was to blame. He said, quote, "Guns don't kill people, feminists do." Now, I will say, I don't think the rise in school shootings is due to guns existing, but to blame feminists when an overwhelming 94 to 96% of shooters are male is a little bit of a stretch. Were they all doing for the feminist cause? Doubt. What is it that the red pillars often say is kryptonite to women? What is that word? Oh yes, accountability. What is happening here? The red pill libertarian is blaming women for the crimes of males. Kind of like when men cheat and it's the fault of the wife type thing. Yeah, Kind of like that. Because, men's are the leaders, but also they cannot control themselves and their emotions.
Men want male leadership, and so men have to be strong.
Larson on the internet had a whole universe that he had created, which kind of led to him believing that he could win these elections based on his beliefs that there were enough people that thought this way. In fact, he stated that himself. He was known on incel forums as leukocyte, which apparently means a type of bird. He started threads titled, quote, "Even if you could get PUSSY from a willing female, you should still want to grape girls." And, quote, "Father-daughter INCEST makes more sense now than ever." I wonder if it started making sense before or after he had a little girl. Another one, quote, "Acid attacks are the great equalizer," which basically suggested that women should learn what it feels like to be, quote, "crippled with ugliness." He hosted communities where there were thousands of other members. He was not alone screaming on the internet. Posts by other members included, for example, a 3,300-word essay titled, quote, "How to psych yourself up to feel entitled to grape." And, quote, "Don't forget, feminism is the problem and grape is the solution." Now, side note, if you're not familiar with the word grape as a replacement for the real word I'm saying that starts with an R, well, now hopefully you are. Another post by the prospective politician said, quote, "A man should be allowed to choke his wife to death as punishment for cutting her hair short without permission or other acts of gross subordination." Larson told the Huffington Post in response to a question about whether he was actually a P-word pedophile or merely wrote about it online, he said, quote, "It's a mix of both. When people go over the top, there's a grain of truth to what they say." I agree with him there. He described the term as, quote, "vague," and described men being attracted to underage girls as normal. And again, I have seen the sentiment expressed by other men online, including Nick Fuentes. But this is not the reason that led to his arrest, at least not directly. I mean, we have free speech. After all, encouraging our word in forums is not a crime, right? Larson's behavior finally landed him in jail when in 2020, he was arrested by authorities at the Denver International Airport because he was caught with a 12-year-old who he had persuaded to run away from her home in California. A 12-year-old. Absolutely vile. Larson had made the girl wear a long hair wig to look older and told her to pretend to be a mute during the travel. He was formally then arrested on felony charges of attempted kidnapping, child abduction, soliciting child sensitive material from a minor, among other things. He had met this 12-year-old online and had convinced her to send him sensitive images of herself. This man had a very twisted mind, as you can tell, and I'm sure he justified it all to himself. After all, he didn't seem to think of women or girls as people. But thankfully, he got caught and took himself out of the equation before any real harm could be done. This is not the case, though, for many others who have been linked to incel forums online, who have gone on to be radicalized in their absolute hatred for women and decided to take their frustration about not being able to get a girlfriend out into the real world in violent ways. These people include the likes of Elliot Rodger, who has been called a supreme gentleman by other incels online and called himself an alpha male and complained about girls not being attracted to him, and therefore they must be punished for it. And he went on a killing spree where he took the life of multiple women and a couple of men. I presume what he perceived to be, quote, chads, who he called obnoxious brutes. You know, because Elliot wasn't an obnoxious brute. He was a nice guy. So why can't women just be attracted to him? He's a nice guy. George Sodini entered a women's aerobic class in LA and began firing, taking the life of multiple women and injuring others. He was also a member of Incel forums and pickup artist communities. Then there is Ben Moynihan, who tried to stab a bunch of women in the UK because he said he wanted to punish women as an act of revenge because he was still a virgin. Chris Harper Mercer, who shot up a classroom and then himself, and he had left a manifesto where he complained about being a virgin and not having a girlfriend. Then there's William Atchison, Nicola Cruz, both who took to killing people and praising Elliot Rodger as an inspiration. Then there's Alec Mination, who, before taking the life of quite a few people in Toronto, had written, quote, "The Incel rebellion had already begun. We will overthrow the Chads and Stacys. All hail the supreme gentleman, Elliot Rodger." Now, side note, if you don't know, Chad and Stacys are considered to be men and women who are good looking and seem to have no problem dating. The Stacys are the women that the incels desire, but feel they cannot get. And guys, I could keep naming names, and maybe I will in a future video, but because together, these guys have taken the life of over 50 people. But many will refer to this section of the manosphere as fringe, a few crazies. And some, even after hearing all of this, will even go as far as saying that the incredibly vitriolic and hateful things that they say online do no harm in real life. It's all a big joke. And I don't think the murder victims of these guys or their families feel it's all a big joke. Obviously, fringe members, I don't know if you guys are aware of this fringe group in the United States right now called the trans community. Yeah, they're a fringe group, but somehow, some way, they affect actual real world changes, effects, whatever you want to call them. Obviously, this is the darker side of the manosphere, but it is a side that takes what is said to be, quote, jokes and takes them to the extreme. It is a side where people like Nathan Larson believe there's enough people that think like me that I could get voted into office. There's enough people in those communities that think I could go on a murder spree. And there will be thousands saying that I'm a supreme gentleman. Now, before I get the inevitable defense of men and not all men, I mean, obviously, not all men, that should go without saying. And not all the men in the manosphere, also very true. But to be honest, from reading the comments on manosphere channels like Rollo Tomasi, whatever, Pearl Davis, Fresh and Fit, among others, it is very clear that generally speaking, they do not extend the same grace to women. The actions of a single woman tend to be used as examples of why women are overall vile and users. The only way they sometimes separate women are by using the term modern woman versus just women in general, which is not enough in my opinion. And yet, here I am trying to still extend some grace because I do not have this opinion about men in general. I mean, I married a man after all. I have 2 brothers and I have a great relationship with my dad. So my experience with men is not this. But then I was exposed to the space. And then I realized that the caricature that the left and the feminists have been painting about men is true. Not of all men, but a significant number of them. And some women in those spaces of feminism and the left might have had plenty of experiences with those types of men. And I would understand why then they would become hardcore feminists. Same situation with the men that have bad experiences with women, and then they turn to communities such as these. Once you're exposed to this blogosphere, to this collection of internet blogs, and that this section of this community has hundreds of thousands of people that are espousing their absolute hatred for women to the point that they say they should be exterminated. Yes, I've seen those types of comments. You cannot unknow it. And I've been exposed to this community for a couple years now. Yet I always bring myself back to the real world. I touch some grass, but I cannot keep quiet about these types of people anymore because I see them everywhere in comment sections, even of women's magazines. Just explore the EV magazine comment section on their Instagram. You will find some that say things like, I do not understand how women can be this sensitive and still expect to be treated equally. Not sure how one thing would lead to another one. But hey, and most recently I've been into true crime, guys, and there was one case recently where the husband, took the life of his wife because he thought she was cheating on him. And there were so many people defending this man because she might have been cheating on him, or she drove him to this action. Those types of comments seen by other women kind of reaffirm their beliefs. So now I get it. The feminist side is, I get their position. Now, of course, I have to say this. The manosphere ranges from vulnerable young teenagers who are going through a phase, to advocates of rape, to grieving fathers, to then physical abusers, to men actually fighting for visibility of men's issues in mental health that affect their suicide rate, which is pretty high. So yes, it is a wide range of people, and I felt like I needed to say that. But generally speaking, whenever I see the unhinged vitriolic comments, they get very little to no pushback from men. Or they're just taken as funny. So I think it is time to bring these topics to light. The Alpha Male podcast and YouTube channel themselves, selling online courses to desperate men, are also another big part of the issue, filled with total contradictions and copium. But those are different issues altogether. It seems like a general theme is that there needs to be a hierarchy, and that women should not have that much choice over their education, and especially not over who they date. There are a good amount of men who feel they're entitled to women and angry when they do not have one. And let me tell you something, no one owes you anything in this world. Least of all, you're not owed a whole person. I can appreciate the small sections of the manosphere who specifically focus on self-improvement, because ultimately, this is one of the biggest issues these guys have, if not the biggest. If you have an ugly personality and very low self-esteem, most women, especially emotionally healthy women, will not want to be around that. And as I have said in other videos, like attracts like. If you keep having terrible interactions with women, perhaps it is time to look at yourself in the mirror. I've heard men say this exact same thing about women in manosphere channels, that they're constantly attracting terrible men and therefore they're the problem. Well, the advice goes both ways. Now, that said, guys, I'm done with this video. Please let me know what you think. Be civil, of course. Like and subscribe, and see you next week.